Okay, listen. I just rolled out of bed. I haven't done my hair, so I got myself a little bandana on for you. But I read some news last night, and it's been on my heart. And I wrote a little journal entry about it this morning because I've been trying to keep my political thoughts and views in a separate journal of my daily so that I can escape from the political stress that I feel by leaving it in this book and in separate conversations, but not carrying it through my day in my planning and in my other emotion sharing that happens in my journal. With all that said, this morning I opened up my political journal and I wrote, and I kind of want to read it to you and have this conversation with you like simultaneously. So the first line, my plan was the van. So I started researching van life and flipping vans into homes, and because I'm someone who lives in poverty, that sounded sustainable. Years ago, I was planning on buying a house. I had a full-time job that was paying well, and I was well. But if you watched my channel at all, you know I had a brain surgery. If you haven't watched that, check it out. I had brain surgery. My body's ability to work has changed, and thus, so have my hopes and dreams. So with that, when I found that the idea of flipping a van, making it my own home, and making it something that I could travel around in. I mean, I'm a poor person. I've never seen the country in the same way that somebody who's gotten to go several, every year of their life to go to some new place as a little vacay, even just a new beach 3 hours from your house. I've never done that. That wasn't me. So the van really brought me a lot of hope. It felt like I could afford it. It felt like it would bring new things to my life that a home wouldn't. A stable home's not taking me across the country, or rather a fixed structure. And it also gave me something closer than a home, right? Because like I said, I make a lot less money now. A home would have taken me a couple years back in the day. Now it's going to take me a decade to afford on my own. So the van was something that gave me something to look forward to. And with all that said, I started to watch YouTube about people who lived in vans. And one of the things that I've seen really recently, like last week, was the frequency and how many videos I started to see of people dealing with the police. And they talked about how often this was happening. It was increasing the amount of times that they were interacting with the police. And with that, I thought, well, no big deal, right? Because I'm going to put my van on a private property. So I don't have to worry too much about the cops knocking on my van and telling me to move or threatening my safety and security. However, last night, around 10 p.m., I somehow caught wind of the White House's executive order that happened on homelessness. And I'm just going to read it right here, what I wrote. Trump's article is titled, "Ending Crime and Disorder on American Streets." That equates the unhoused, all of the unhoused, to criminals and sick people. Now, if we really look at this, you might be a well person. You might be mentally well, physically well. But if you lose your house and you have no place to shower, so your job doesn't want you there, you stink. Now, your options are limited. You might have to steal something to eat from the grocery store. I'm not saying it's all right. I'm saying you're hungry. I'm saying that's available. I'm saying that's what you have to do. When you're homeless and you sleep on the streets and somebody offers you a drug that's going to take you off the street just for 5 seconds, excuse me, that was my dog. When you have somebody offering you a drug, you might not even be a drug user, but you're desperate, you're cold, you're hungry, you're tired, you're scared. And this sounds like an escape. I'm not giving an excuse for this. I'm saying this happens more often in the homeless community for a reason, because they're unhoused. So with that said, Trump said, we're going to go ahead and arrest them. We're going to go ahead and institutionalize them. We're going to put them in mental health hospitals, and we're going to put them in jail. And what I learned, just like the brown folks that we're rounding up around this country and we're putting into institutions, what I learned is that these institutions are funded. These things were built and funded by large conglomerate companies. These people are rich. And you know what they need? People in those prisons. They invested in those things. In order for that investment to return for them, they need people in there. And not only do they need people in there, they need them working. Because those folks work for a couple cents a day, but the company who owns the prison makes a couple dollars off of each and every one of their products. We need that. And so now we rounded up a bunch of brown people. We put those in encampments. We put some of those in prisons. We have some of those folks working. But because the American citizens who have been here, who were born here, have been, I don't want to say brainwashed, but we've been told over and over and over again about the laws and about the punishment and seeing what the prisons look like. So Americans have stopped going to prison over the last 40 years. That's why these prisons are empty. That's why they're starting to round up. That's why they need people in there. They need them in there. They need them in there for money from the government, because those government's paying them to store, and they need them in there for them to work. And what I thought about, and I might be wrong, but what I thought about was the homeless become slave labor. The homeless become perfect candidates for slave labor. We take them in because they have no place else to go, no family who's housing them, so obviously nobody cares. We bring them in. We have them make product for us, and we collect the funds from that. And not only does this then affect the folks who are already on the street today, because me, Van, my name is Van, and this is, is unrelated to the van with 4 wheels. My name is Van. Me, Van, I have been fearing homelessness because I have gotten a brain surgery, my ability is less so, and I make less money. I have been in fear of homelessness. And what that's, because I've been homeless before, right? This is a trauma for me that is surfacing. And what I've thought about is now the American people who are working today, who are paying 3/4 of their funds out of their pocket for their home to live in. 3/4 of their funds are coming out for rent and bills, baby. And say all of a sudden they need a little more of their income every month for an emergency. Maybe something terrible happens to their health, or something terrible happens to their teeth, right? Because our health insurance, Medicaid don't cover dental, baby. All I'm saying is if something comes up, and those people like myself who are spending more than half of their income on rent, utilities, those people become homeless, they become illegal, and then they become prisoners. So people, everyone's at risk of this. This is not just the homeless folks who you see walking by talking to themselves and throwing up. Those that are sleeping at noon on the street and you assume it's because they're doing dope. This is everyone. Everyone is at risk, especially low-income people, especially those living paycheck to paycheck. Because, baby, let you find yourself without a paycheck for one time and your rent goes unpaid. You are now just as vulnerable to imprisonment. And what I thought about then is I thought about, all the private equity firms and the corporations in my area. I live in Allegheny County. We have over $1,000 or 1,000 homes last year that were purchased by private equity firms. Those homes were starter homes. Those were for poor people to get out of rental properties that they can't afford to live in, pay a couple $100 less a month for a mortgage, and then own that thing. But no, these conglomerates, these rich folks who already have money, they don't need these homes to live in. They don't need the rental income. It's just added income. They came into the Allegheny County. They bought the homes that the poor people were going to try to get into. So now you're even more stuck in an unaffordable housing situation. The apartment I live in is a 1-bedroom apartment. It's falling the fuck apart, and we pay more than $1,000 to live here. This is not luxury, baby. This is low quality, and we pay top dollar. I don't have to tell everybody that, because other folks, huge portions of the nation are doing this because it's necessary, because we have to. And now if we don't, we are facing imprisonment. So yeah, with all that said, to bring it back to my point, van dwellers are dwellers. And you know what a dweller is? It's a homeless person. People who live in a van are seen by our government just as homeless as the person who's sleeping with a blanket and 2 pallets outside. You might not be the same level of burden shipped to the cops downtown, but when you park your truck somewhere and they come and knock on your door, they see you as that same burden as that person laying on the cardboard. And so for me, you know, my van plan, van plan, you know, it's still there. It's still there because I'm privileged enough to know someone who would let me park my van on their property, and thus I would not face arrest. But things have changed dramatically, y'all. Just in January, people were losing their homes, planning for vans, and now all of a sudden, the plan for vans has become unsafe. People who have lived in vans for the past 15, 20 years have become unsafe in their homes because legally they're still seen as a vagrant. And you know, I'm not the type to make these videos because I do feel vulnerable putting myself out here, not to the community necessarily, but those who run this place. You know, when you put a video out here like this, you're basically saying, I don't agree with those in power, and thus, do with that what you will. But, you know, we have to start having these conversations. And by we, I mean me. I need to start having these conversations with folks. And I'm going to put it here on YouTube. And hopefully folks will start talking back with me. And we can, you know, if nothing else, you know, give each other emotional support. And, you know, the bonus is, if, you know, folks know more than me. I know that. I'm not the smartest person in this world. And so I know people who know more than me are watching these videos. And if you want to leave a comment to educate me and others who watch, I would love that. Thank you so much for taking a moment to stress here with me. I'll see you later, y'all.